Tariffs are single-handedly ruining the gaming industry. They've brought us a $550 Switch, $80 games, and who knows what else is coming down the pipe. Is that the real reason, tariffs, or is it really just a convenient story for this industry to continue to raise prices as a collective whole? Usually, when there's good competition in a market, that competition drives prices down. Everybody wants to win the price war, so they offer their goods as low as they can get them, and the competition to do that keeps prices low so consumers, you and I, don't have to pay a premium for the same product. The gaming industry is actually really different. Games are generally the same price everywhere you go, and they have done this for decades. The gaming industry has an absolute value signaling problem, and we can look at this as recently as 2020 when Take-Two raised their NBA game up to $70 from the traditional $60, and that immediately triggered every other publisher. Instead of producing a basketball game and selling it for $10 less, they raised the prices on their games. And now everybody is charging $70 for a game. It's the standard price. It's the new industry norm. GTA 6, long rumored to cost $100 or more for the game. Industry analysts say it's going to come out and it'll have a base version at the market rate. Well, what's the market rate? When they asked the CEO, he said the quality would be worth the price back in May 2024. He wasn't actually trying to tell you, he wasn't trying to give the price away. He wasn't saying, oh, it's going to be the same $60 you're used to paying, the same $70 you've been paying. He said, well, it's going to be worth what it's worth, implying that he's going to be charging more than the industry standard at the time he gave that interview, right? Take-Two knew, or Rockstar knew, that they're going to charge more for GTA 6 back in May. All right. Just as Nintendo likely knew they were going to charge $550 before Trump ever said the word tariff. The reality is the gaming industry fixes the bag, not through backroom deals necessarily, but by matching the prices of their competitors. And unlike every other industry where competition drives the prices down, in the gaming industry, competition is driving the prices up. We're paying more every generation for the same games, and over time, the games don't get any cheaper. The hardware doesn't get any cheaper. It stays the same price, and everybody's competing with each other at the same price, which is crazy from an economic standpoint. Nintendo released the pricing of the Switch 2 shortly after Trump's tariffs were announced and before they went into effect. And everybody assumed and jumped to the conclusion that Nintendo has upped their prices because of the impending tariffs are going to raise their costs. But Nintendo actually came out with a statement and they said, well, we set this price before the tariffs came to be, and the tariffs aren't affecting this price. In fact, they actually delayed US pre-orders specifically to wait and see what the tariffs would do to their costs. They literally had their price, and now they're saying we were holding off on pre-orders because we might have to raise that price based on tariffs. That's not an indicator that they set the price because of tariffs. Obviously, they are setting the price, and then the tariffs are going to drive it up higher. Digital also raise their digital game prices. They're not going to charge the current rate for games. They're upping it. They're going up, ratcheting those prices up to $80 for a game. It's crazy when you look at the cost of the game. Again, it can't be a tariff thing. You can't charge tariffs on a digital product. It doesn't work that way. So these aren't reactions to tariffs. These are reactions to a market that they are setting. They're set the pace for the market. And it's not the first time games have done this. In fact, gaming has moved steadily forward and upwards in price collectively since the 90s. Back in the 80s, back in the cart days, prices were a little flexible because carts were generally had to be custom made, right? The chipsets had to be made depending on how much memory the games used, depending on what went into the processing. The cost to manufacture carts was a little flexible, and so prices had some flexibility in them back in the day. And availability played a factor in that as well, as carts were often not available, so retailers would charge more. And carts would actually go down over time as they stopped being the newest thing and the demand went down. That is typical, the expected supply and demand behavior that you'd see in an industry, right? It costs a lot to make something, so we charge more for it. And when there's a lot of demand, the cost goes up. When the demand goes away, the cost goes away. All right. However, in the 90s and definitely into the 2000s, mass-produced disc games, starting with the PlayStation and then going on to PS2 and GameCube and all the Xbox and all the competitors at that time, to produce a CD was standardized. It cost the same amount. It was the same CDs, right? And so it was just writing to the CDs. You weren't manufacturing specific CDs for each game, all right? And so it allowed them to standardize prices, and they standardized it at about $50. And it stayed that way for a long time, late 1990s all the way through the early 2000s. Through the 2000s, you got into the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era, and the prices went up. They jumped to $60. And the argument was, well, we have to produce it in HD. It costs more money to produce it. It's more effort to do. And so we're raising the prices. And one company raises the prices and everybody goes up to match. 2020, same thing. As I mentioned at the top of the video, raised the cost of NBA 2K21. And sure enough, everybody else followed immediately. It took less than a month for the new standard pricing to be $70. And we've all gotten used to it. Right? $70 is it's what a game costs. We look back in the past and we pull out the magazines for Toys R Us or whatever, and we go, oh, look, it used to be reasonable prices, but what we pay, it's $70 for a game. And it's the normal because the industry sets that standard and we just buy it, right? We don't ask the question of why isn't competition driving the prices down? Why aren't we paying less today than we did at the start of this generation? Why is the price stuck at $70? It's normal. And it's because the industry sets value relative to each other, right? Unlike other industries where the goal is to reduce cost as much as possible so you can reduce prices as much as possible and be competitive on price, the gaming industry has thrown that whole idea out the window. And what this industry focuses on is actually being the same as everybody else, right? They don't want to be the cheap one because nobody believes that the cheap one has the quality. Right? If you are the discount manufacturer, everybody assumes your product is lower quality. If somebody comes out and says, oh, we're going to release a brand new game, but we're only charging $40 for it, which happens in the PC gaming market, people look at it and go, oh, well, let's compare that to AAA gaming, right? Even if it is, in fact, a AAA game, it's not going to receive the same respect from critics and in a weird way, from the market. They're not going to view it at the same level as, say, a Call of Duty game or GTA 6 game, right? If it costs less, it is less of a game. You get less game, it's less quality, it's not going to be as enjoyable, it's not actually worth your money. That's the mindset that the industry has created for the gaming, right? That is the console gaming mindset, and it's why they can get away with not having competition on price. Now, the current argument is that, well, this price hike is actually due to the tariffs. The tariffs are coming in, the games will cost more to import and manufacture, therefore, they're raising the prices. And it actually, when you look at it beyond just the immediate slice of history that we're in right now, it doesn't actually hold up, and it doesn't match other industries that have had to face things, increases, and how they've dealt with it, right? So if you look at, say, it happened in 2008, 2009, that era. The economy crisis at that time actually triggered massive increases in fuel costs. And so the airline industry didn't raise their ticket prices, and shipping and freight industries, they didn't raise their freight costs. It cost roughly the same one day as the other. What they charged is actually a fuel add-on, right? They had a surcharge that they added to your bill for the additional cost of the fuel to get your package delivered, to get your airplane delivered, right? To get you on their plane, to get you from one end to the other. And they said, hey, we're going to charge the surplus based on how much it cost to transport it, right? The fuel cost that we're paying, we're passing on to you. And what that did is it actually drove the government to work hard to get the oil prices back down so that they could afford to get on the airplane. They could afford to ship their packages, because the industries made it very clear that these costs were not their costs. They weren't raising their prices. These were the results of these widespread economic issues that were worldwide, and that if people wanted those things to come down in price, they needed to go after and get rid of the high fuel costs, which eventually happened, right? Fuel costs came back down, the fuel surcharges went away, and prices remained fairly stable. The restaurant industry, especially in California and New York, have dealt with this as well. California, all the way back in 2006, passed San Francisco specifically started it, and they said all restaurants have to actually provide health insurance for their servers. And so what the restaurants did is they said, well, that's going to cost us money. The city said you have to set aside a certain percentage of your income to pay for these health services. So what did the restaurants do is they put a surcharge on your bill for that amount. They said, great, well, we're just going to pass that to our customers. And they called it out in the bill. And people got pretty upset about it. And though these come and go, restaurants tried to very clear, hey, this surcharge is being forced on you by someone else. It's not us. We're not raising the prices. This cost comes from somebody else. Okay, they've done it with there's COVID surcharges that were being leveraged because of costs they were incurring from state mandates. There were surge from inflation during the last few years because the cost of inflation was up. And every chance they got hit with one of these fees, instead of eating it or forcing the customers to blindly pay extra without understanding it, they went out of their way to say, hey, look, this is somebody else's problem that they're passing on to you, right? If the gaming industry, if Nintendo was being hit with tariffs and it was causing them to have to raise their new console away from the $299 that it was to $450 in the US, we would actually likely see a surcharge on our bill of saying, hey, we want to sell it to you for this much money. But because of tariffs and because of all this stuff going on, we have to charge you for these fees that are being handed to us by somebody else. If Nintendo did not intend for these prices to be permanent, and they were not intended pricing, they would leverage their ability to rile up their user base, which is pretty easy, probably going to get riled up from this video, and they would leverage that to push back against the tariffs and say, hey, y'all need to make this go away so that we can bring our prices back down. So you can pay what we, instead they just said, it's $450. Welcome to the table. The gaming industry has a long history of taking every opportunity they can to raise prices collectively and not lower them again. Nintendo has raised the bar here, and that triggered Microsoft to raise the bar. We just saw their prices go up. But Sony started this a year ago. Around the same time we talked about GTA 6 back in 2004, Sony was quietly raising their prices. They raised prices in Japan and Europe prior to US tariffs. Back in 2024, they raised it, or back in 2022, they raised it again in 2024. And looks like they will probably raise it again this year. The point of this, of course, is you can't have a PlayStation 5 the same price as a Nintendo Switch that has half the power. It's a bad value proposition for Sony. Our console is so powerful. It's the most powerful console. You should buy Sony. Well, why is it the same price as the Nintendo Switch? The Nintendo Switch you can carry with you. You don't build a good value proposition by showcasing better hardware for the same price as cheap hardware. So from their point of view, it makes no sense to keep the prices down. That's why we have a $700 PS5 Pro. That's why it seemed so outrageous when it came out. Now we're used to it. $700 for a PlayStation Pro. Well, $600 for a regular PlayStation 5. Sounds right to me, considering that the bottom level, the entry console, is $450 going forward. Xbox is taking the same approach, right? They raised their Series X by $100 and their Series S, their introductory console, don't get behind by the handheld, went up $80. If they really were feeling pinches and expecting a massive pinch from tariffs, these console makers would make sure their customer base knew this was the problem. Instead, it's a smokescreen. And the reality is the industry has been moving this direction for a year. Anybody who's been paying attention has been able to broadcast $80 games. We have been talking about this for a year since the rumors that GTA would cost $100 back in April and May last year. The reality is those rumors were true. This game will cost more. It may even cost more than $80 at launch. We don't know. They won't tell us, and they just delayed it another year, so who knows? And according to rumors, we have another console generation coming out around the same time that coming out. It's a perfect time to raise prices, and in this case, it's a perfect time to get everybody used to $80 games before the next generation comes out. Because if you're Sony and you're Microsoft, you're kind of looking at the current generation, this 9th generation of consoles, as a loss. It's done, right? It's not growing. We know that. So instead of waiting until the next year, start moving prices up so that when the next generation of hardware comes out, no one is shocked. No one is blown away when prices are higher. Set the trend now when you don't expect to make a ton of sales from now to the end of the console generation, and set yourself up for success with the next generation. And that's what I think is going on here. We're not reacting. We're not seeing reactions, knee-jerk reactions to what's going on in the globe, right? What's going on in the global economy, because that's volatile. That's going to change over time. These tariffs might be all gone 2 months from now. We don't know. They're not basing this stuff off of tariffs. They're basing it off of where they want the price to be a year from now and how comfortable they want people to be paying these higher prices for the next generation of consoles. That's what we're setting up for. That's the process we're in right now. And it has very little to do with what's going on in the world stage. All right? That's what I got for you today. If you disagree, drop your comment down below. If you like what I put out, if you like these ideas, please like, subscribe, notification bell, and I'll catch you on the next one.